Ever since he was a child, Ethan Cole had been fascinated by the stars. While other children dreamed of becoming athletes, soldiers, or famous scientists, Ethan dreamed of one thing: the unknown. On warm summer nights, he would lie on the roof of his family's small house and stare into the endless sky for hours. To everyone else, the stars were nothing more than distant lights. To Ethan, they were invitations. Silent promises that somewhere beyond the darkness, incredible worlds were waiting to be discovered. He promised himself that one day, he would answer that invitation. Years passed. Dreams became determination. Determination became reality. Ethan eventually became one of Earth's independent deep space explorers. He wasn't part of a famous expedition. He didn't command a massive fleet. He didn't answer to governments or corporations. He was simply one man, a small ship, and an endless universe. He went wherever curiosity carried him. While others searched for valuable minerals or profitable trade routes, Ethan searched for mysteries, ancient ruins, uncharted systems, forgotten civilizations, anything no human eyes had ever seen before. It was exactly the life he had always wanted. On that particular day, space was unusually quiet. His small exploration ship drifted through an uncharted region far beyond the official star maps. Outside the cockpit, nothing existed except endless darkness scattered with countless stars. Inside, the soft hum of the engines blended with the rhythmic beeping of navigation systems. The peaceful silence didn't bother Ethan. In fact, he enjoyed it. There were no deadlines, no orders, no destination, only freedom. He leaned back in the pilot's chair, smiling as another unknown star slowly appeared on the forward display. "This is why I came out here," he whispered to himself, "to find what nobody else has." Then, the silence shattered. A sharp burst of static exploded through the communication speakers. Ethan sat upright instantly. His relaxed expression disappeared. Another burst followed. Faint, broken, almost impossible to hear. He reached across the control panel and adjusted the receiver. "Come on." The signal grew stronger, still distorted, still buried beneath layers of interference. But now, he could hear a voice, desperate, panicked. "Help." The message repeated. "This is..." More static. Ethan switched to emergency frequencies. The transmission suddenly became clearer. "Mayday, Mayday. This is Royal Vessel." An explosion thundered somewhere in the background. The voice screamed, "We're under attack." More static flooded the channel. Ethan's fingers froze over the controls. A royal vessel? Out here? Another fragment broke through. Enemy boarding parties, shields collapsing. The transmission cut out again. For several seconds, nothing. Then one final desperate message reached him. "If anyone can hear this." A long pause. "Please, save the princess." Silence. The emergency beacon continued transmitting automatically, repeating the same broken distress call over and over. Ethan stared at the blinking signal on his navigation display. The source was less than 12 light minutes away. He had no idea who the attackers were. No idea whose princess was aboard. No idea what kind of fleet he might be flying into. He was alone. One explorer. One ship. Against an unknown enemy. His onboard computer flashed a warning. Risk assessment. Extreme recommended action. Avoid contact. Ethan looked at the warning for only a second. Then, he smiled. Yeah. He quietly pushed the throttle forward. That's not happening. The engines roared to life. His small ship accelerated toward the distress signal, disappearing into the darkness. Somewhere ahead, a royal family was fighting for its survival. And without realizing it, one ordinary human explorer was about to change the fate of an entire galaxy. Ethan's heart jumped. The words were clear now. Someone was in danger. His mind raced with questions. Who were they? What kind of attack? Could one human in a small ship even make a difference? Logic told him to stay away. A lone explorer had no chance against a powerful enemy. Yet something inside Ethan refused to ignore the call. He thought of the many nights on Earth when he wished someone would notice him. Someone would come if he ever needed help. Now another voice was crying out for the same. Ethan could not walk away. He set a course toward the source of the signal. The stars blurred as his ship sped through the darkness. Minutes later, the scene opened before him. A massive royal vessel glowing with golden shields floated in space. Around it, a swarm of hostile ships circled like hungry wolves. Blasts of energy shook the shields, making them flicker. The royal ship was strong, but the enemies were too many. Ethan's hands tightened on the controls. His ship was small, hardly armed compared to the attackers. Yet, he had something they did not. Improvisation. Humans were known across space for their unpredictable ways. Where other species followed strict patterns, humans invented new paths, even in chaos. He took a deep breath. "All right," he whispered to himself. "Let's make them believe I'm more than I am." Instead of flying straight into the battle, Ethan darted around the edges, firing small bursts at unexpected angles. His ship's weak weapons could not destroy much, but they created confusion. The enemy ships, thinking a larger force had arrived, broke formation to chase him. Ethan smiled. "That's it. Come after me." He led them in circles, weaving between asteroids, switching directions without warning. Every move was risky, but that was exactly why it worked. The attackers were built for order and strategy. They did not know how to handle chaos. While they chased Ethan, the royal ship had time to repair its shields and prepare a counterattack. Finally, Ethan made his boldest move. He lured 3 enemy ships close together and then cut his engines, letting their own momentum send them crashing into one another. The explosion lit up space, and the remaining attackers pulled back, uncertain now if more strange humans were waiting in the shadows. Within moments, they retreated, leaving the royal vessel damaged but alive. Ethan let out a long breath. His hands shook from the tension. He had survived, and more importantly, so had the people aboard the ship. A new voice filled his communicator, calm yet strong. "This is Princess Serena, of the Aurelian Empire. Identify yourself, human." Ethan almost laughed at the sharp formality. Even now, after he had saved her, she sounded as if she expected him to bow. He pressed the button and replied, "Name's Ethan Cole, just a traveler who couldn't ignore your distress call." There was a pause. Then the princess answered again, her voice softer. "You risked your life for strangers." Why? Ethan thought about it. The answer was simple. Because no one deserves to be left behind. Moments later, he received clearance to dock with the royal vessel. As his small ship connected to the grand golden craft, Ethan felt a mixture of nervousness and wonder. The Aurelian Empire was known across the galaxy for its power and beauty. He had never thought he would step inside one of their royal ships, much less after rescuing their princess. The airlock opened, and a group of armored guards greeted him. They looked at him with suspicion, their eyes cold and calculating. Humans were not trusted in every corner of the galaxy, but they could not deny he had just saved their future queen. Then she appeared. Princess Serena stepped forward, her gown shimmering with silver threads that caught the light. Her presence was commanding, yet there was kindness in her eyes. Ethan bowed slightly, though he was not sure what the proper gesture was. "You are different from what I expected," Serena said, studying him carefully. "Your kind is known for being fragile, yet you fought against odds even our trained warriors feared." Ethan gave a half smile. "Humans are fragile, sure, but sometimes that just makes us fight harder." For a moment, their eyes met, and Ethan saw something shift in her expression. Respect, perhaps, or curiosity. He was not sure. The princess motioned to her guards. "He is our guest. Treat him with honor." As they walked through the halls of the royal vessel, Ethan could not help but stare. The ship was a masterpiece of design, with walls of crystal light and ceilings that glowed like starlight. Everything was grand, almost unreal. Yet, even in all this beauty, he noticed something else. The quiet fear in the eyes of the crew. They had almost lost their princess. Their empire could have been shaken to its core, and the one who saved her was not one of their own, but a lone human traveler. That night, as the ship sailed back toward the home world of Aurelian, Serena came to Ethan's chamber. She stood at the door, her voice calm, but curious. "You could have run. No one would have judged you for it. Why throw yourself into danger for a world not your own?" Ethan looked at her and answered simply, "Because sometimes the right thing isn't about who you are or where you're from. It's about doing what you can when you can." For the first time, Princess Serena smiled. It was small, but it carried warmth. She turned and left without another word. But Ethan felt that something had begun, a bond he could not yet name. He did not know what awaited him in the golden palace of Aurelian. He did not know that saving a princess would only be the first step into a world of politics, power, and impossible choices. For now, he only knew this. He had answered a call for help, and in doing so, he had changed the course of his destiny. And far away in the grand halls of the empire, whispers had already begun. A human had rescued the princess. What would the queen say when she learned of him? The golden world of Aurelian Prime slowly came into view through the windows of the royal ship. Ethan Cole stood silently, staring at the sight before him. The planet looked alive, glowing with rivers of light and cities that floated in the skies. Towers of crystal reached upward, linked by shining bridges. Whole gardens floated on platforms above the oceans, and the seas themselves glimmered with colors he had never seen on Earth. It felt like a dream, and for a moment, Ethan forgot about battles, danger, and politics. This was a world of wonder, and he was a stranger walking into it. Princess Serena stood beside him. She too looked out the window, but her gaze was steady and practiced. To her, this was not new. This was home. Yet, as she glanced at Ethan, she seemed curious about what he saw in her world. "You are quiet, human," she said. Ethan gave a small smile. "I'm just trying to take it all in. On Earth, we don't have this." He waved his hand at the shining planet below. "It's like something out of a dream." Serena tilted her head. "Perhaps. But dreams can be both beautiful and dangerous. Remember that." The ship began its descent. Aurelian's atmosphere sparkled against the shields as they passed through. Soon the grand golden palace, the very heart of the empire, came into sight. It floated on a massive platform above the capital city, glowing brighter than the rest of the world. Towers shaped like rising suns, walls covered in shining gold stone, and vast courtyards that stretched wider than entire human cities. Ethan could hardly breathe. "And I thought your ship was impressive," he muttered under his breath. When they landed, a group of armored soldiers awaited them in perfect formation. At their center stood a woman whose presence made Ethan's chest tighten. She wore robes of white and gold, her crown shaped like rays of light. Her eyes were sharp, full of authority. Yet there was something softer beneath them. This was Queen Eloria, ruler of Aurelian, mother of Serenia, and one of the most powerful leaders in the galaxy. The guards struck their staffs against the floor as the queen stepped forward. Serena bowed gracefully. Ethan, uncertain of the customs, gave a respectful nod. The queen's voice was calm yet commanding. "My daughter returned safe and unharmed. For that the empire rejoices. And for that," her eyes fell on Ethan. We must thank the unlikely rescuer who risked all to protect her." Ethan felt the weight of her gaze. "I didn't do it for thanks, Your Majesty. I just couldn't ignore the signal." The queen studied him closely, as though searching for something hidden in his words. Finally, she smiled faintly. "A simple answer, but not a weak one. Humans are full of surprises." Serena glanced between them, a flicker of unease in her expression, though she said nothing. The queen extended her hand, and Ethan, after a moment's hesitation, placed his own upon it in greeting. Her grip was firm, her presence overwhelming. He could feel the quiet strength in her, not just as a mother, but as a ruler who carried an empire on her shoulders. "You will be our honored guest," Queen Elora declared. "The savior of the princess will be treated with respect in this palace." The guards bowed. Ethan, however, felt a strange twist in his chest. Honored guest or not, there was something in the queen's eyes that unsettled him. Respect, yes, but also curiosity, and something else he could not name. Inside the palace, Ethan was shown wonders beyond imagination. Halls made of crystal light stretched endlessly, lined with murals of the empire's history. Statues of past rulers towered above, their faces carved in gold stone. Floating gardens filled the air with sweet scents, and streams of liquid silver ran through the courtyards. Everywhere he went, people whispered. Servants, nobles, and guards alike stared at him with a mix of awe and suspicion. A human, small, fragile, and plain compared to the shining citizens of Aurelian, had saved the princess. Some bowed slightly as he passed, others frowned, but all eyes followed him. At the evening feast, the whispers grew louder. Ethan sat beside Serenia, At a long golden table filled with nobles and warriors, plates of glowing fruits and crystal-like breads were served, their flavors strange but delicious. A noble leaned toward Serena and whispered loudly enough for others to hear. "Surely, princess, this human story is exaggerated. How could one lone traveler defeat a fleet of enemies?" Another added, "Perhaps the attackers were weak, or perhaps luck favored him. No human could stand against trained forces." Ethan felt the heat of their words, but said nothing. Serena, however, lifted her chin. "I was there. I saw it with my own eyes. Without him, I would not be seated here tonight. Do not mistake courage for luck." The nobles fell silent at her sharp tone, but their eyes lingered on Ethan with doubt. Later, when the feast ended, Queen Aloria summoned Ethan privately. He followed her into a grand chamber lit by golden flames. The queen stood near a balcony, looking out over the glowing city below. "You are unlike most who come before me," she said without turning. "You have no army, no crown, no rank. Yet you achieved what my strongest captains could not. Tell me, Ethan Cole, what drives you?" Ethan hesitated. He wanted to answer simply, but under her gaze, words felt heavier. "I don't know, Your Majesty. Maybe I just can't stand to see others fall when I can help. I'm not the strongest or smartest, but I try. Sometimes that's enough." The queen turned, and her eyes softened slightly. "Strange. In our empire, power is everything. Strength of will, strength of command. Yet you speak of something else. Perhaps that is your strength." She stepped closer. Ethan could feel the air shift around her. "You interest me, human. You have already earned a place in our halls. Perhaps in time, you may earn something greater." Ethan's chest tightened again. He bowed respectfully. "I'm honored, Your Majesty." But as he left the chamber, his thoughts churned. The queen was not just thanking him. There was something deeper in her words, something that unsettled him even more than the whispers of the nobles. That night, Serena visited him in his guest chamber. She moved quietly, her silver gown flowing like water. "My mother has spoken with you," she said, not as a question, but a fact. Ethan nodded. "Yes, she thanked me. She was kind, but also intense, like she was studying me." "Serena, that is her way. She sees people not only for what they are, but for what they might become. And when she finds someone who interests her, she does not let go easily." Ethan frowned. "You make it sound like I've stepped into something bigger than I realize." "You have," Serena said softly. "You saved me. That alone is enough to place you in the center of the Empire's gaze. But my mother, I have seen the way she looks at you. She admires what you did, perhaps more than admiration." Ethan fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. He had only wanted to help. He never imagined it would lead to this. Standing between a princess, her queen, and an empire, watching his every move, Serena placed a hand on his arm, her eyes steady. "Be careful, Ethan. In Aurelian, kindness and interest can be as dangerous as anger and hate. My mother's attention is a gift, but also a chain." Ethan nodded slowly. "Then I'll have to find a way to walk carefully." The princess smiled faintly, but her eyes held worry. "I believe you can. Humans are unpredictable. That may be your greatest weapon." Outside, the city of Aurelian Prime glowed like 1,000 suns, unaware that within the palace walls, choices were already being written that would shape the Empire's future. And as Ethan lay awake that night, staring at the crystal ceiling of his chamber, one thought refused to leave his mind. He had rescued the princess, but what would happen now that the queen herself had set her eyes upon him? The palace of Aurelian was quiet at dawn, yet tension thrummed through the golden halls like a heartbeat. Ethan Cole walked through the gardens, the floating flowers shimmering in the early light. His thoughts were heavy. He had arrived as a traveler, saved a princess, and now found himself entangled in a web of power, expectation, and attention he never asked for. Princess Serena joined him, her face calm, but thoughtful. "You have changed since you arrived," she said softly. "Not just in others' eyes, but in your own." Ethan looked at her. "I've changed. I can't pretend anymore that I'm just passing through. I'm part of this now, whether I want to be or not." She nodded, understanding. "You saved my life. That is why the queen watches you. That is why the nobles whisper. And that is why my heart is both proud and fearful." Ethan sighed. "I never imagined that doing what was right could bring so many chains. I thought helping someone was simple, I didn't know it could tie me to an empire. The queen's offer later that day. Queen Allure summoned him to her private chamber. The sunlight glinted off her golden crown, giving her a radiant aura. She gestured for Ethan to sit beside her on a cushioned bench. You have become more than just a human in my palace, she said, her tone calm but intense. You have proven courage, wisdom, and loyalty, qualities rare even among my own people. I offer you a place at my side officially, not merely as a guest. Ethan's chest tightened. He had expected praise, perhaps gratitude, but this offer was different. The queen's attention carried weight, power, authority, and expectation. I appreciate your offer, Your Majesty, he said carefully, but I'm not sure I can accept. I'm not used to this kind of life. Queen Alluria's gaze sharpened. It is not about what you are used to. It is about what you can give, and I see in you something none of my subjects possess. A spirit free of fear, a mind that can act where others hesitate. Ethan swallowed. The truth was, he wanted freedom. He had always valued his independence above all else. Yet the queen's words made him question. Could he use this position to help more people, to protect the princess and the empire he had already grown to care about? A choice between duty and desire. That evening, Ethan walked alone in the moonlit gardens. Serena appeared quietly at his side. My mother intends for you to stay, she said softly. She admires you, human, perhaps more than I can explain. But I do not wish for you to be trapped. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. I want to help to do what's right, but I can't give up who I am. If I accept her offer, I might become more than a symbol. I might lose the freedom that makes me me. Serena's voice trembled slightly. Then you must decide. Not for my mother, not for me, but for yourself. Humans are stronger than we thought. Not because of power, but because of choice. The word struck him. He realized that he had always admired humans for their freedom. They could choose, act, and live without being bound by tradition, by expectation, by empire. That same freedom now stood before him as a choice. Stay in power, or leave, and keep his independence. The threat returns. Suddenly, alarms rang throughout the palace. Enemy ships had breached Aurelian space once more. Their attacks were precise, relentless, and terrifying. The generals hurried to the war chamber, their faces tense. Ethan followed, understanding the urgency. He studied the enemy's movements, noting patterns the Aurelian commanders missed. They expect you to react in straight lines, Ethan said to the generals. You must be unpredictable. Split your forces where they do not expect. Use your ships as traps, not just weapons. The generals looked at him skeptically, but Queen Alluria raised her hand. Trust him. Let him guide you. Under Ethan's direction, the defenders used clever tactics. They feigned weakness, lured enemy ships into traps, and struck when least expected. The humans' unpredictability worked. The attacks that would have destroyed the palace were deflected, and the invaders began to retreat. Ethan stood among the Aurelian leaders, exhausted but alive, watching the last of the enemy ships flee. For the first time, the queen looked at him not just with admiration, but with something deeper, a spark of respect, and perhaps desire. Decision time. That night, Ethan sat alone in the palace gardens, staring at the floating lights of Aurelian Prime. Serena joined him silently. You saved the Empire today, she said quietly. You could stay and become more than anyone imagined. Ethan shook his head. I did what I could. That's all I ever promised. I cannot give up myself, even for the Empire. Serena nodded, pride and sadness mingling in her eyes. Then you must leave, human. But know this. Your heart, your courage, and your choices have changed us. The Queen, the Empire, and I. We will remember you always. Ethan stood, taking one last look at the glowing city. He knew the path forward would be difficult, but he had made his choice. Freedom, courage, and integrity would guide him. Not power, not wealth, not even admiration. The Empire had been saved, and Ethan Cole had proven that even one human could change the fate of worlds. Days passed in the Golden Palace, and Ethan Cole began to feel the weight of his strange new role. He was treated with respect by some, suspicion by others, and watched by all. Every corridor he walked through, every hall he entered, whispers followed him. The human savior. Is he truly so brave? Or was it only luck? Why does the queen speak to him as if he were more than a guest? Ethan pretended not to hear, but the whispers clung to him like shadows. He had come here as a wanderer, a man without a plan, but now he stood in the center of an empire's attention. The queen's invitation. One morning, Ethan was summoned to a private chamber of the palace. Golden light filtered through tall windows, and guards lined the walls. At the center sat Queen Aloria, her crown catching the sunlight. She gestured for him to sit beside her on a bench of polished stone. "You walk these halls with uncertainty, Ethan Cole," she said, her voice calm yet sharp. "Do you feel like a prisoner?" Ethan hesitated. He could not lie. Not to her sometimes. "Yes, I'm honored by your kindness, but I am watched constantly. It feels less like freedom and more like being held." The queen smiled faintly. "You are watched because you are important. Do you not see it? You saved my daughter, but more than that, you showed us something rare. Courage born not of duty, but of choice. That is powerful." Ethan frowned. "Powerful, maybe. But I didn't come here to be a symbol. I just did what I thought was right." "Exactly," the queen said, leaning closer. "That is what makes you different. My warriors fight because they must. My nobles serve because of tradition. But you acted freely. That freedom is what makes humans special, is it not?" Ethan shifted uncomfortably. Her words were flattering, but her gaze was heavy. There was admiration there, yes, but also possession. He felt like a jewel she had discovered and refused to let go. "You interest me, Ethan Cole," Queen Allure continued, "and interest is rare for one who has ruled as long as I have. I wish for you to remain at my side, not only as guest, but as something greater." Ethan's heart skipped. He opened his mouth, but found no words. What could he say to a queen who hinted at such things? A princess's warning. Later that night, Serena found him walking alone in the palace gardens. The floating platforms of flowers glowed softly under starlight. She approached quietly, her silver gown brushing against the grass. "My mother has spoken to you," she said. Ethan nodded. "Yes, she wants me close to her. Too close." Serena's expression darkened. "I feared this. My mother is not cruel, but when she desires something or someone, she does not release it easily. You may think you are free to choose, but if she decides otherwise..." Ethan looked at her. "And what about you? What do you want from me?" For a moment, Serena's composure broke. She looked away, her voice softer. "I want you to be safe. You saved me when you had no reason to. You stood against enemies for a stranger. I owe you more than I can ever repay. But if you remain here, you may lose the very freedom that makes you who you are." Their eyes met in silence. There was something unspoken between them, a bond neither fully understood yet. Serena respected him not only for saving her, but for the way he stood in the palace, unbent by pressure, unwilling to change himself for power. "Be careful, Ethan," she whispered. "The queen's admiration is a double-edged sword, the empire's unease." While Ethan struggled with the queen's growing attention, the empire itself trembled. The same enemy fleet that had attacked Serena's ship had not disappeared. Reports reached the palace daily, skirmishes near the border, raids on outposts, whispers of a larger attack brewing. Generals met in the palace war chambers, their voices raised, their plans strict and predictable. They argued over strategies, each one focused on numbers and formations. Ethan was sometimes allowed to watch these councils. He said little, but what he saw troubled him. The generals thought like machines. Every move was planned in straight lines, every attack in neat formations. It was efficient, but predictable. One evening after a heated council, Serena asked him, "Why do you frown when you hear their plans?" Ethan shrugged. "Because the enemy will know what they're going to do before they even do it. Humans fight differently. We adapt. We change mid-battle. Sometimes, we even do the completely wrong thing on purpose, because it's the last thing the enemy expects." Serena studied him carefully. "That unpredictability, that is what saved me, isn't it?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Maybe, or maybe I just got lucky." She shook her head. "No, it was not luck. It was human instinct. And it may be the very thing the Empire needs now." Tension in the palace, as days turned into weeks. The bond between Ethan and Serena grew stronger. They shared conversations in the gardens, walked through the floating libraries, and even laughed together at times. But the queen noticed. One evening during a feast, Queen Alora's gaze lingered on them as they spoke softly at the table. Later, she summoned Ethan once more. "You spend much time with my daughter," she said, her tone calm, but edged with steel. Ethan answered honestly. "She trusts me. I trust her. We've been through danger together." The Queen's eyes narrowed, but then she smiled. "Good. Trust is valuable. But do not forget, Ethan Cole, that your place in this palace comes not from her, but from me. It is I who granted you honor here. It is I who decide whether you remain." Ethan bowed his head slightly, masking his unease. "I understand, Your Majesty." Yet inside he felt trapped. Serena wanted him to stay true to himself. The Queen wanted him close, perhaps even bound to her. And the nobles watched with sharp eyes, waiting for him to stumble. The spark of conflict. The tension reached its peak one night, when alarms rang through the palace. Enemy ships had entered Aurelian space again, striking at the border. Panic spread among the nobles, and generals rushed to prepare fleets. In the war chamber, chaos reigned. Maps flickered with red lights, voices shouted orders, and fear filled the air. Ethan stood at the edge of the room, listening, until finally he could not hold back. "You're all walking into their trap," he said loudly. The generals froze, staring at him. One sneered. "And what would a human know of war?" Ethan stepped forward. "I know what I saw when I saved your princess. The enemy isn't just attacking blindly. They're testing you, learning your patterns, and you're giving them exactly what they want. Straight lines, predictable moves. You're making it easy." The room fell silent. Even the Queen looked at him with interest. Ethan continued, his voice steady. "If you want to win, you can't fight like them. You need to surprise them. Make them think you're weak. Then strike from where they least expect. Humans win not because we're stronger, but because we're unpredictable." The generals muttered angrily, but Queen Aloria raised her hand. "Enough. The human speaks boldly, but perhaps with wisdom. Let us not dismiss his words." Ethan felt Serena's gaze on him. She smiled faintly, pride shining in her eyes. That night, as he returned to his chamber, Ethan knew something had shifted. He was no longer just a guest or even just a rescuer. He had stepped into the heart of the Empire's struggles, caught between a queen's desire, a princess's trust, and a war that threatened to consume them all. And though he longed for the quiet freedom of his small ship, he could not deny the truth. The fate of an empire was now tied in some strange way to him. Ethan's departure from the palace was quiet, but full of attention. The streets of Aurelian Prime were alive with whispers and stares. Citizens lined the walkways, curious about the human who had saved their princess and led their fleets to victory. Princess Serena walked beside him, their hands brushing but not quite touching. She did not stop him, but her eyes held unspoken words, gratitude, affection, and the faint sorrow of loss. Queen Aloria awaited them at the palace gates, her golden crown gleaming. She did not speak at first. Her gaze held Ethan, measuring, searching, testing. "You leave, Ethan Cole," she said finally. "After all I have offered, all I have admired, you choose freedom over power, independence over comfort. Tell me why." Ethan met her eyes steady and calm. "Because humans are strongest when we choose our own path. I came here to help, to do what I thought was right. That is enough. I cannot give more than that without losing myself." The Queen studied him for a long moment, then slowly nodded. "You have courage, human. And courage is rare in any species. Go then. But remember, one who walks freely can change worlds without crowns or titles." Ethan inclined his head in respect. "Thank you, Your Majesty. A princess's farewell." Serena took Ethan's hand for a moment before he boarded his ship. "You're not just a hero," she said softly. "You are a human, and that is what makes you extraordinary. Remember us, and know that you will always be welcome here." Ethan smiled. "I will, and I will carry the lessons I learned here with me." As the ship lifted off, the princess watched, her silver gown catching the light of the rising suns. Ethan glanced back, giving her a small wave before focusing on the stars ahead. Across the galaxy, Ethan's ship glided into open space. The galaxy stretched before him, endless and full of possibility. He thought of the Aurelian Empire, the Queen and Princess Serena. He thought of the battles, the choices, and the freedom he had fought to preserve. Humans were not the strongest in muscle, nor the most advanced in technology, but their strength was in courage, choice, and adaptability. That was what had saved a princess, led an empire, and held the respect of a queen. Ethan smiled to himself. The stars awaited, and he would continue to explore them, carrying his human spirit wherever he went. A legend begins back on Aurelian Prime. Stories spread quickly. Citizens spoke of the human who had saved their princess, defeated enemies with clever tactics, and chosen freedom over power. In the halls of the palace, nobles whispered, generals studied, and even Queen Aloria spoke of him with quiet admiration. Princess Serena often walked through the gardens Ethan had once wandered, thinking of him and the courage he had shown. Though he was gone, his influence remained. Across the galaxy, the name Ethan Cole became known. Not for a throne, not for wealth, not for titles, but for something far rarer, the proof that one human could change the course of worlds with bravery, wisdom, and choice. And that was only the